Hey, Steve Schneeberger here with Keller Williams. We're moving into video number 3 of our 7-part series on the Richfield point of sale inspection. And in this video, I'm going to cover some of the more commonly called exterior items on the report. A lot of these slides I'm going to show you are ones that I've taken personally of homes that I've been involved with. And, some interesting stories that go along with some of them. But basically, what you're going to see here is the majority of what will be covered in the inspection. And I'm not there, it's tough to cover every single thing that the inspector is going to look at. But if you nail these that I'm going to show you, you're going to have 90% of it in good shape. So let's roll and see what we've got. The first thing, and this is probably one of the most common things that will be called if you have a situation that looks like this, is peeling paint. Now, the thing with peeling paint is that the concern is that if your house was built before 1978, which all of ours were in Richfield, there may have been lead-based paint used on the surfaces of the walls. And because lead has been shown to be a hazard, the lead-based paint then was outlawed in 1978, and then everything going forward, we have to disclose that there could be lead-based paint. So with this wall here, the way you would work with this is you don't necessarily need to repaint the whole wall. Now, a buyer would love for that, and it would obviously look a lot better if you did paint the whole side of this garage. But as far as Richfield is concerned, they are only looking that the peeling paint be scraped off and encapsulated with another coat of paint. So you could theoretically just scrape off this board, kind of where it's peeling, and you could just touch up paint this. Now obviously it's not going to match, it's going to look terrible, but Richfield will pass that in a bind. The other thing about this garage is that any rotted wood, and you can see this very bottom row here, this is going to be, obviously a result of snow piles being here every winter and rain puddles forming around here. This bottom piece of siding is rotted out. So the city will ask you to remove that and have that replaced with a new piece of wood. The other issue with this garage is that there are kind of scrub trees, volunteer trees that have started to spring up, and they haven't been taken down, and they're growing right close to the structure. So any tree or shrub within 18 inches of a house or a garage must be trimmed back or removed. The thinking behind this is if these start to grow and then the wind blows the branches and the leaves scrape against the wall or the roof of your house, that over time that can cause some wearing on the surface and damage your roof or your wall. Plus it's kind of unsightly. So in this case, the inspector were required that these little scrubby things be cut off and removed. Now, that being said, if you have a big, huge oak tree that's sitting right next to your foundation, don't cut it. A lot of times the inspectors will have mercy on something like that. The last thing you want to do is cut down a 100-year oak tree when you don't need to. So this really is meant to address more of the volunteer trees that have come up and just haven't been taken down. Foundation cracking is something that they'll look at, or just missing mortar in the cinder blocks that comprise your foundation. In this picture here, it looks like there was a skim coat of concrete skim patch that was put over the cinder block, and over time this is cracked, probably because of the rain coming out of that downspout and circling back and pooling over there. So over time, through the freeze and thaw cycles, these cracks will get bigger and bigger. So from Richfield's standpoint, they would just want you to seal that. Now, that could be with some concrete patch, it could be with some silicone. Again, they're not looking for perfection and pretty, they're just looking for integrity. So, you might end up wanting to peel this all off and start over, but really Richfield would just want you to patch that. When it comes to chimneys, there's a couple things that we are looking at here. Number one is your chimney your flue must be capped. Whether you have a single flue or a double flue, anything that sticks up above here, this clay piece, that has to have a cap on it. That's where it exhausts. So not only does it have to have a cap to prevent rain from coming in, there also has to be a little mesh area here that closes off this area. It can't be open because theoretically critters could pop in here and get down into the chimney and cause problems. So the flue cap it has to have a cover plus a little mesh screen with it. One of the more potentially expensive items that can come into play is having a chimney that looks like this one on the left. Now the inspector is not going to crawl up on your roof and look real closely at your chimney or your roof for that matter. But if from the ground, you can probably see there's a few things going on here. Namely, the faces of the brick have started to come off on these courses, and likely there's maybe been some deteriorating of the mortar. What's going to need to happen in this case is, depending on how many courses of brick are damaged, you're going to have a chimney contractor come out and remove all of this and then build it back up again and put the cap back on it. Usually what I come across is maybe the first couple rows, the mortar's all peeled away, the bricks maybe coming out, chipped away. That can be, a $2,000 to $3,000 fix just to do 2 rows. If you get down, the further down you go, of course, the more expensive it's going to be. This could be a few $1,000s to get this fixed, but it does have to be fixed, unfortunately. And it's just something that goes with the territory. So, at the end, you're going to have it looking pretty like this for the next buyer, unfortunately. This little doodad here is called an antisiphon device or a backflow preventer. This is probably the most common thing you can see right away on your faucets, and you can go and get these and put them on. I'd say most houses, the inspector will call this out. So this little thing's called the antisiphon device. So this screws on to your faucet threads, and then your hose would screw onto this here. So this ends up going on your faucet. And the reason we put these on is that the water can't backflow through your hose and up into your water supply. This prevents water from siphoning back into the water supply. And so that's why they need them. They're $5 or so. And if you go into a big box store and say, I need a backflow preventer for my house, they'll take you exactly to where you need to be, because this is very common, especially in Richfield and Bloomington. Also, I'll say too, if your laundry tub is one of those older ones where it does have a thread that would fit a hose, you'll need a backflow preventer for that faucet as well in your laundry room. Windows. A couple things with windows. On the older style windows where they've got the glazing, and that's this little putty that is used to hold the pane in place. You can see here is some of this, the glazing has been chipped away, is missing. And if it all goes away, then this pane of glass will just pop out. So the city will want you to touch this up, just put some glazing in here. This is kind of a tricky little project to do. I would, you could have a hardware store, if you can get the window out and take it with you to a hardware store, it's really easy. Or if you just had a general handy person, they'll come out and do this for you. It's not really that fun a project, even though it looked like it might be simple. So that's window glazing. And then also any kind of cracked or broken windows will have to be addressed. So in this case, it's just this little window pane. It could be popped out, get a piece cut at the hardware store, pop it back in, and then do the glazing around it. This one you don't see too often, but a clogged dryer vent. This one here, you can see where there's actually lint coming out of the bottom of this. And the inspector might just stick their hand up in there and feel, and if there's a lot of lint, they'll just ask that you clean it out. Now you could just go and, put your hand in and pull out everything that you can personally feel and touch and pull out. That's probably going to work. Some of these vents here are actually louvered. So if you open a louver and you see a lot of lint in there, it might be wise just to have a duct cleaning company come out and clean that out for you. For safety, it's a fire potential hazard. All right, moving to the garage. There's a few things to consider in the garage. One is that all garage door openers need to be able to plug in directly to an outlet. So I put this photo in here because this is done incorrectly. The garage cord itself is pretty short, and typically they are. So what's going to happen here is, because this is an extension cord, in order for this to meet code, you'd have to move this outlet up to here so that you can plug the cord directly in. Now, if you don't, if you've got an old garage door, it's not working, or you've got some situation going with it, you can actually just take it all out, and it will, the city will pass that. The buyer might not be happy not having a garage door opener, but it does work. The other thing I'll point out here, and this isn't the case in this picture, but sometimes when people install these garage door openers, they have to notch out some of the 2x6 framing in the garage in order to get the track to go through, at a level angle. These garages weren't built originally for door openers, so sometimes these 2x6s are in the way. If you notch out one of these 2x6s, obviously that affects the structural integrity of that beam. And so sometimes what the inspector will require is, if there's a notch here, you're going to have to reinforce that by putting a couple 2x6s on either side of it in order to make it more structurally integral. These are the sensorize at the bottom of the garage door. They have to be in working order. So when they push the garage door, go down, you put kick your foot through that beam, it has to reverse the garage door, or that will not work. It has to trip and go back up. Let's talk a little bit about some exterior things. Now, I mentioned earlier the inspector doesn't climb up on the roof, so they will look at the shingles of your house and determine if there's missing shingles, or if they're clearly damaged, they're curling, they're cracking, they're peeling away. If you've got a massively old roof, it might become a problem, but more often than not, you're not going to have to do much with your shingles other than maybe replace a couple, if anything at all. But what I wanted to talk about here was this, where obviously this person didn't clean out their gutters for quite some time, and now they have little mini trees growing in here. So, inspector's going to see this from the ground, and this will have to be cleaned out. You can just get up on a ladder and get that stuff cleaned out. This picture here, just a couple things. You have to have some sort of an extension coming out from your downspouts. Ideally, it's maybe 4 or 6 feet in length, but you can't terminate the downspout right next to the foundation, just because water's going to flow out of this, and it's going to come right around back to your house, and it's going to go down into your foundation, maybe into your basement. So 2 things here. One is to have an extension. Secondarily, it can't be all crunched up at the end. It has to have a free flow for water to come through. So this probably got stepped on or something, you'd have to replace this. And then to wrap it up for the exterior, just a few bullet points to cover. Only 1 storage shed is allowed on the property. So if you have a couple, you have to take one of them off. It's just the way it is. I don't know why. And then the storage sheds you do have, the one that you do keep and save, that one does have to be in good working condition. So in other words, if you've got peeling paint on wood siding, that has to be fixed up. If you've got shingles that are missing, those have to be fixed up. And it has to be, passable. It doesn't have to be beautiful. Piles of debris. Boy, I've got this in my yard, and I think a lot of us do. There's a corner in your yard where you maybe piled up some sticks and branches when they've fallen off the tree, maybe a pile of leaves from the fall, just a bunch of miscellaneous debris. That all has to be taken out, cleaned up, and removed. So whether it's back in the corner of your yard or kind of in the middle, those piles all have to be cleaned up and taken out. Also, the inspectors don't like to see piles of wood, firewood, stored next to a structure like your garage. So if you do have piles of firewood, they should be up off the ground first of all on some slats or something where it's not actually on the dirt ground itself. But also they may want you to remove them if they're sitting right up next to your garage, for example. A lot of times people ask about sidewalks. Over time, those big trees that we have in our front yard, the roots may have kind of done a number on the sidewalk. Parts of it might be shifting up and down. And unless your sidewalk is in really, massive heaving state, meaning you've got like a 2-inch gap of height difference between one section versus the next, you're probably okay just doing a little bit of a concrete patch or something to kind of smooth it out. You're likely not going to need to replace your sidewalk. And then finally, cracked or crumbling steps will need to be repaired as well. And I showed you that picture earlier about the foundation with the cracked cement. The same would be true with your steps. If the side of your steps are cracked, those would have to be touched up again, patched. And then the surface to the risers, the steps themselves, I should say, those have to be, they can't be crumbling and cracked off at the corners. There's kind of a stopgap method for working with that. It's kind of like a skim coat, a concrete skim coat that you can use to kind of patch it and square up the steps. But it's pretty temporary, let's say. After a couple freeze and thaw cycles, it's going to crack again, and that's all going to come out. But, as far as Richfield's concerned, that's all that they need, and that's good for them. So, there's other things that probably would come up in doing an exterior look around, but those are the big things that you want to focus on, mainly those backflow preventers and any peeling paint. Those would probably be the biggies to look at. So that's it for exterior. Next video, we're going to launch into the interior, which is my favorite part. So stick with me and click on the next film.